Welcome back to Wolfpack Career Chats, the place where we turn big ideas into momentum. I'm your host, Marcy Bullock, and usually I feature a guest on each episode. But today I am going to be in the hot seat, and I'm going to be interviewed by my podcast editor, Luka Jovicevic, who is a junior in computer engineering.
Hi, Marcy. Now, usually you're the host, but today the tables have turned. You're going to be the one answering the questions. Now, what are you hoping to share with your audience today?
Thanks for turning the tables on me. This will be fun because I thought I would have this segment, and I love that you are steering it, called the Courage Corner, where fear meets action. Kind of more of a solo take on my insights and advice to help you, because you're a student, and most of our listeners are as well, with practical tips just from me and all my experience to help students break into a nervous sweat and stop sweating whenever something happens that requires courage. So today, what topic should we do that scares people?
Well, let's start with something a little bit hard. On all of these episodes so far, I've heard a lot about the job search, and one of the biggest parts are interviews. So what are some tips that I should keep in mind while interviewing?
Ooh, good question, Luka, because people do get very nervous about interviews, even if they're applying for academic positions, national labs, leadership programs, industry roles. Interviews are part of the journey. And I know when you got this role as podcast editor, you had to go through an interview. Did that make you a little bit anxious?
It did, yes.
I think you are not alone. So I think that would be a fun topic to start with today.
Absolutely. One of the things I keep hearing about is an elevator pitch. Can you explain a little bit about what an elevator pitch is and what makes a good elevator pitch?
That's a great question. Everyone hears that and it's like, do you get in a magical elevator before this happens? Or why is that analogy being used? But it's basically the idea that if the CEO of your dream company stepped in the elevator, so let's just let you dream for a minute. If the sky was the limit today, what company would you love to say, Luka, you got the job?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I would have to say probably TSMC, a Taiwanese semiconductor company.
Wonderful. So I am the CEO of that company, and I walk in, and you basically have 30 seconds to wow me. I step in, and by the time we get to floor 35, you get to say the impact statement, such as hi and your name, and what you are studying, what your work focus on in one sentence, kind of your it factors, the way I think of it, or your special sauce, and what you're passionate about in terms of solving problems, and what opportunities you're excited about in the future. So it's short and it's confident and it's clear. Have you ever done it before?
I haven't, no.
All right, well, that is your homework assignment. You get to work on the elevator pitch, but that's only one part of the interview. And a lot of times people will start off with that kind of thing where it's like, tell me a little bit about you, give me your elevator pitch. But I also want to share the kinds of interviews that you might get, because I know when you interviewed for your role, was that a Zoom interview?
It was, yes.
So you had to get your camera right, and you had to have your lighting correct, and you had to have all your tech working. So a lot of interviews can be phone or video. That would be a screening round where employers want to check for your communication skills, your clarity, and your enthusiasm. And then for, I guess what you want to say is your first professional full-time role with your degree, they would move you on to an in-person or an on-site interview, which could be anywhere from a half day to a full day. It's kind of like a marathon where you talk a lot about yourself to many different people. You answer technical questions about your computer engineering degree, and they want to fit for the cultural awareness, see if you fit in with their culture. So that's the next phase. And part of that, the third one I wanted to tell you about, you could expect is a panel interview or a committee interview, which is really common in academia and in the universities where multiple people ask you the questions. And when they are asking you the questions, you kind of want to make eye contact with everyone, because sometimes people just look at the person that pose the question, but you don't want to leave anyone out. It can feel a little intense, but it's just a way to evaluate your fit across all the different dimensions. And like I said, it's a marathon, so don't be afraid to repeat things that are on your resume, because your resume got you into the interview, but they're not going to remember all that. So tell the stories at that point. Does that help a little bit?
Absolutely, yes. And sometimes these interviews are very stressful and very high stakes environments. Sometimes I freeze up in the middle of them. What are some strategies I should keep in mind while that happens?
Okay, so I love that you said that. I've had it happen too, where all of a sudden you get this really hard question and your mouth goes dry and you are literally paralyzed. So I'm going to tell you about that. And also, I'm going to tell you about a tip that I have for preparing because that helps you not freeze up. But if it happens, these interviewers are pressure cookers. It's very human. So, welcome to being a human and not being perfect. And I want to take a moment. Let's say you asked me this question today, and I'm like, ooh, he asked me what to do when you freeze up. And I'm like, oh, I don't know the answer to that. What I would say to you in this podcast is that's a great question, Luca. Let me take a moment to gather my thoughts. And that's fine to pause. I know this dead airspace. It sounded really awkward. No one was talking, but it buys you a little time, and pausing is great. It is better than going off on a tangent and rambling. And then if you're really stuck, you could try, I haven't encountered that specific scenario, but here's how I would approach it. It shows that you're thoughtful and proactive. And preparation will help you so you don't freeze up. So I have just 5 quick tips on how to prepare. Before I say mine, what is the one way you prepared for your interview? Did you look at the website or do any kind of prep?
I definitely looked a lot at the job listing, found some very specific parts of my experience that I could apply to the job, and different stories that I could bring up during the interview.
That's fantastic. Probably why you got the job. So I'm going to add to that. You did a great first round of preparing. I do recommend that people research the organization and the role. So you looked a lot at the role and also the organization. So the company that you mentioned, don't just look at what they say about themselves, but the library system has amazing databases that they pay for that allow you to see what other people think of that organization. So you can actually just go on the chat with a librarian at Hunt or Hill and say, I have an interview at Google or wherever. Help me learn about the company. And they will unlock a key that stores information that most applicants don't have. So you would be going above and beyond the basic search on what that company does. So that's the research, the organization. And to be totally honest with you, the biggest concern I hear from employers who recruit graduates is they have no information about the company. They haven't even taken the time to figure out what their mission is. And that to the company shows that you are not the right candidate because they want the person that digs deep and goes above and beyond, because if they get the job, they'll go above and beyond. So researching the company, the next one is know your story, which is what you just told me. How do my skills match up with what they are looking for? And have stories ready. I always tell students have at least 3 stories. It could be your study abroad, an internship, a problem with a roommate, but have the stories ready and then practice them. Just practice them out loud, practice in a mock interview setting, and don't be afraid to write down the stories so that you have your situation, task, action, and result. That's what we call the STAR method for behavioral questions.
Absolutely, and I love that you brought up some of the resources that our libraries have to offer with researching different companies. I was wondering if there are any other resources that you can, as an NC State student, tap into.
Yes, there are. So the Career Development Center is a wonderful resource. You can go onto EPAC and schedule a counseling appointment with your specific counselor that is tied to your college. And you can also schedule the mock interview there.
That's awesome. Now, one other thing that I want to know about interviews is what should I wear to make a good first impression?
Ooh, that's a good one. A lot of people think about first impressions, and a couple tips on that are always be on time. On time means 10 minutes early. Always be kind to everyone, from the front desk person to anyone that you see in the restroom. Be aware of your body language. Keep your eye contact firm and have your handshake firm as well. And that doesn't mean you stare someone down, but be aware that developing rapport in our culture involves eye contact and handshakes even after COVID. It's fine to do them. I know it sometimes makes you nervous to touch another person, but just use your hand sanitizer later and make sure your posture is upright and that you have the good energy and enthusiasm that's contagious. And then you asked a great question because before you even open your mouth, I see you and I make an assessment of you. Like if you looked at me, you might say, okay, I'm going to look at you because you look like you're a certain age, or I'm going to look at you because you're a woman, or whatever the case may be. So I recommend business casual attire. And you can look that up. It basically means think clean, think press, think neutral colors. A blazer is always nice. And think about the fact that you are maybe even overdressing a little bit than you would normally need to be because you want to be respectful and professional. And then sometimes students ask about, can I be authentic? I don't know what that means to you, but when you think about what to wear and how to present yourself, is there anything unique about the way you look that you would want to ask, do I need to change it? I don't know, I'm thinking tattoos, piercings, hair colors, anything along those lines.
Well, if you've seen any pictures of me, you know that I have some pretty wild hair. So do you think some things like that would be okay to bring into an interview?
Yes, wild hair is a great question. And all the things I mentioned are ways people show their unique, authentic self. I do not think that they are a problem. I think you can present yourself as a unique story, and many workplaces now embrace individuality, so you don't have to cut off the crazy hair. But that said, you're not heading to a concert or going out with friends to a club. So just think about a polished version of your style that shows you're serious about the opportunity while still being true to who you are, because professionalism doesn't have to mean boring. It just means being intentional, if that helps.
Absolutely, yeah. And of course, formal clothing isn't always that easy to get, but thankfully NC State has its own resources. There is the walk-in closet that any NC State student can take advantage of, so we can link up to that in our show notes.
I love that you've already used the clothing closet over in Pullen Hall. What did you snag from there? Because it's all free and students forget that.
I was able to get some very nice button-up shirts that I wore to some interviews and that I wore to the career fair.
That's fantastic. And career fair season is every fall and every spring. So I love that you use that and that you drop that gem for this listener.
So let's say I followed all of your quick tips and the interview went fantastic. How should I follow up after the interview to make sure that I get the job?
Ooh, good question, Luca. So after the interview, you're not done. You want to send a thank you note email within 24 hours and mention one specific thing you appreciated from the conversation. Keep it short and sincere, but it could be something like, thank you for sharing more about your team's work on X project. It made me even more excited about the opportunity to contribute, and I appreciate your time and insights. If you haven't heard back in a week or two, it's okay to follow up politely. I have heard a lot of hiring managers mention that they like persistent candidates and you're not bugging them by checking back.
Absolutely. That's good to hear. Now, interviews aren't only for the company themselves to find the right candidate, but it's also for the person looking for a job to learn more about the company and more about the position. What are some frequent questions that I should ask during interviews?
I have my secret list of questions that I am about to share with you and the person listening today, because a lot of times people don't know what to ask at the end, and you're 100% on target that you are assessing, is this the right role for me? So it's really important for you to be prepared with questions to ask them. So I have 6 of them, and I'm going to just rattle them off now. They're a little bit unconventional. You won't find them on AI, so it's good that you're listening. First one is, what is something that surprised you about working here, good or bad? Why I say that question is it honestly gives you something beyond the company pitch that everyone's trying to tell you. I don't know what it would be, but something surprises everybody, and it's not going to be on the website if it's a surprise. The next one is, if someone fails in this role, what usually went wrong? And this shows you're not afraid to talk about challenges and that you're serious about success. Next one is, in 6 months, what would make you say hiring me was a good decision? That shows that you're looking forward. And I love this one. How do people feel here about working in this company? And what do you think that people here get wrong at first about this company? Because everyone wants to give you a positive thing. Oh, this is the best place ever to work. But when you ask them what misperception they had at the beginning, that helps give you a little bit behind the scenes insight of people who work there. And then my final one is, what do you do on this team that is unusual, special, or different than your competitors? And that's because you want to see if, again, this is the right cultural fit for you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you for that. This is going to be the end of our new little segment called The Courage Corner, where fear meets action. If you found this helpful, share it with someone else who's prepping for the interview or save it to re-listen for your big day.